John, repeat the plan out loud for me. Please. William turned away from the panoramic window in the suite and looked straight into his eyes, still sitting in the couch sipping on Jameson. Repeat it to me. What will we tell him? What's our pitch? We are heading to the South Pole. It's a destination we've dreamt of going to for a long time. Once we reach the pole, we turn right back again, and eventually we will fly back to Stockholm once we've returned to Australia safe and sound. There and back, nice and easy in a couple of weeks. Slam bam wham. Easy. A couple of weeks, tops. Good. If he only knew that we may never return. He wouldn't believe us even if we told him, said John. And thank heavens for that. And what is it that we need? A vessel capable enough to reach the Antarctic coastline and a few good men on board. And resources, lots of them. State-of-the-art tech, medical kits, repair tools, food, water, the works. And what did we conclude about the snowcats? I can't remember. Snowcats. Snowcats, John. Never mind how bulky they are, how are we going to refuel them? There's no gas station down there in the white empty void. Even if we were to bring portable gas with us and fuel up manually, it won't last very far. No. We are going to walk and rely as little as possible on vehicles of any kind. Also, our cover story dictates that we are only pursuing this voyage to reach the South Pole. And you don't need no snowcat to reach the ceremonial South Pole. Hell, even Amundsen did it 100 years ago, and he made it the whole way without any motor-driven vehicle of the sort. He rode a sled pulled by a pack of polar dogs. Huskies, they were. Might have been Samoyeds. Oh, whatever. My point stands. I suspected as much. I just wanted to throw it out there. It would work. It should, if your father will act in the manner of our liking. The way we think we will act. William fondled his round glasses and looked at him with an empty stare. Who knows, he said and wandered off and about in the room nervously for the 11th time. 21 stories below, a yellow-tinted Opel Astra cab pulled up by the Treasury Hotel and dropped off 2 passengers. Allison, said Oscar hurriedly. I need you to go to the convention in my stead and hold the line for me. I'll be in touch. All right. If you say so, sir, said Allison and hopped back into the taxi. She waved the window down and peeked her head out. I'll stay there and wait for your return. Thanks plenty. That would be all, Allison, he cried just as the taxi drove off, and he marched straight into the lobby of the Treasury. Striding forward like an angered bull, charging towards a matador in a Madrid bullfight, he resolutely presented himself in front of the reception desk. Pardon me, he told the receptionist. I am here to visit 2 fine young gentlemen. Milton and Willander. Which room? Of course, said the receptionist and browsed the computer in front of her. Milton, yes. Penthouse suite, floor 21. Room number 237. Thank you, he said and undonned his beige cap. He walked with determined steps towards the elevator hall. The elevator doors opened and he walked in and pressed 21. John fiddled around nervously with his phone. How the hell is this going to play out? It'll be all right. It's just the angsty part of you freaking out. Pull yourself together, John. All of a sudden, a noise echoed through the suite. 3 loud knocks, and William rushed to the door. He looked through the keyhole and saw to his delight that the expected visitor stood right outside. He opened the door gently and let the man in. Although William recognized the man as his father beyond any reasonable doubt, he was clad in the most unusual garb. It was not only the rugged clothing that stood out. His father looked worn out in his overall demeanor. Oscar wore a torn-out Gantt cap and a dull t-shirt with matching shorts, a dress code that to William screamed run-of-the-mill tourist. His beard was much longer and wider than he had remembered. Longer and more unkempt. The man before him was a far cry to the successful businessman who appeared in tailor-made suits on the covers of various papers and magazines. My dad is turned into a scruffy old bear. He looks like Saul Berenson from Homeland. Father, cried William and embraced his senior. They hugged for a mere second until Oscar yanked back and looked feverishly around the suite to get a lay of the land. He spotted John, who had seemed to be hiding behind the cabinet. When John realized that he had been noticed, he stepped out and waved at Oscar with an uncertain gesture. William, he said and looked straight into the eyes of his son with a piercing gaze. Tell me now, please. What the hell is going on here? William smiled nervously. I will, Dad. Come in. Oscar was taken aback by the overblown luxury the 2 youngsters had decided to wallow in. King-size bed, panoramic view over Perth, 60-inch Panasonic 3D television, the well-sorted drinks cabinet. Oscar noticed more than one vintage wine inside the cabinet, being a connoisseur himself. You people are more well off than I am, it would seem. Good gracious, William. John decided it was time to present himself more formally than a half-hearted hand gesture. He reached his hand out to shake Oscar's. John Willander. I'm a classmate of William's. Oscar inspected him from top to toe with a sly look in his eyes. Yes, so I heard. A pleasure to meet you, he said and spun right away to William. All right, enough with this. Tell it all now, and tell it true. I want to know why you've run off all this way, and why you lied to your mother about it. Fair enough, said William and asked him to take a seat in the couch. Perth is not the final destination for John and I. We are pointed towards Antarctica, father. The South Pole to be more precise. It would be a major milestone for the both of us. Going to the utmost southern extremity would be a huge achievement for us, something to put on the resume, so to speak. I know this is crazy, and it must seem like it came out of nowhere, but we really do want to travel there. We've been planning this for quite some time. We didn't want to tell anyone. It would just raise eyebrows and cause needless worry for our near and dear. William looked at John, who nodded approvingly. Oscar was bewildered. So, you've gone and gotten yourself some kind of wanderlust. Did you have an epiphany one morning? Because I can't recall you ever talking of going off to the South Pole, nor any other exotic landmark of the sort. What brings you to the world's end? John chuckled internally over how Oscar was blissfully unaware of the irony in what he just said. Wanderlust, said William. Yes, something like that I suppose. The bottom line is that this is something we really want to do. And we ask of you, if you would be so kind, to provide us something that we need to pursue this voyage. And what would that something be? A ship and a loyal crew. To accompany us all the way. From sea to land. William couldn't tell if Oscar deeply pondered his call for help or if the man was just tired. He was slouched in a strange position on the couch and his eyes looked weary. At last, he spoke. I don't want you to head down there. It's dangerous, and you have zero experience in traversing vast swaths of uninhabitable land. Nor have you ever faced a climate so harsh, to my knowledge. I've never been to Antarctica myself, but I know enough to make the judgment call that it would be a risky business indeed. He paused for a while and drew breath. That all said, you are a grown man now, and you can do as you please. You're mature enough to make your own decisions in life, and I won't stop you. In fact, I am somewhat enthralled that you have decided to do something so ambitious. You've wasted quite a few years of your life just sitting about in your comfort zone, if I say so myself. No offense. None taken, said William and raised his arms up in surrender. Good. What I am trying to say is that while I think this might turn out to be an unwise endeavor, when all is said and done, I am proud of you for trying. It might make a man out of you. I will back the both of you and will provide you with what you need. On one condition. You will tell me in exact detail, right down to the last inch of your plan, and how this is going to work. After that, I will back you. William looked nervously at John, drew a deep breath, and started talking. They were both in awe of the towering giant of a vessel ahead of them. The cruise ship Savannah was anchored no more than 10 feet away from them, and John wanted to board her right away. As the waves crashed into the side of the unrelenting titan of a ship, John reached for his gloves in his trench coat pocket. It was a cloudy day, and the wind was blowing through the harbor mercilessly. I wish we'd go in somewhere warm, instead of freezing our socks off here at the docks. Why couldn't we meet somewhere indoors? He glanced once more at the majestic ferry and noticed how it cast a large shadow all over the port. Her color palette is all in white. Most fitting. This beast should be more than adequate for our needs, at least on the outside. Looks can be deceiving and all that. Mr. Milton. Mr. Willander. They turned around in tandem and laid eyes on the source of the deep voice coming from behind, walking slowly towards them. Well, he certainly looks the part. Have I ever had the pleasure to behold such a hardened man before? The man was completely bald and sported a long, raven black beard. His forehead was plagued with an ugly scar that striped all over his head. Well, should we fail crossing Antarctica, we've experienced at least one traversal right here. The scar stretches across his head. I wonder what type of wound that could be. A knife wound? Did he wrestle a grizzly bear? It looks grotesque. The stranger reached out to William's hand to shake it and announced himself. Jacques Sadu. I am from Quebec, Canada. William shook his hand and nearly gasped for air. Oui, Liam. Milton. At your service, he squeaked. Oh my God. Does he shake hands like a grizzly bear too? He walked towards John with slow, lumbering footsteps. There was an aura of primal presence oozing from the rugged Canadian that would scare even the sturdiest of men. After a mere blink of an eye, he stood before him and wanted to shake John's hand. He shook the Canadian's hand and realized right upon touching him that he was a force to be reckoned with. He radiated sheer unrelenting strength from the handshake alone. This guy is aces. We could not hope for a better guide. So, said William. You will guide this expedition of ours. Yes, that is true, mais oui. Mr. Milton the Elder tasked me himself. Winning Oscar Milton over turned out to be an easier job than either of them had ever hoped for. They both told a pretty tale and did not speak a word about a flat earth, hidden landmasses, nor any tales of Admiral Byrd. Oscar truly did seem to be proud of his son, to William's surprise. He agreed right there on the spot to supply material and good, able men. Oscar disclosed that he had reliable friends within the Australian Union and promised that he would be able to find potent professionals who would be up for the job in exchange for a pretty penny upon their safe return home. Where Oscar found the ship, he never did say. Probably for the better that we don't know. Jamie Vickers, Nathan Barnaby, and I will accompany you all the way to the South Pole. The rest of the ship's crew will return to Australia once we have arrived at our destination. It will be just the 5 of us journeying across the white desolation down there. In other words, it is of paramount importance that we work together as a team, and we should get to know one another more closely. Once Mother Nature unleashes everything in her arsenal down there on us, well, we better be ready for that. You will know the true meaning of being cold, my friends. Oh, mes amis. You will. When the slightest breeze will pierce you like a knife through bone and marrow. That is when you will be tested for real. Oh, right. The cold. I had almost forgotten about it, or repressed it, more likely. It's easy to stand here in wondrous Perth a late summer's day and complain about today being cloudy and chilly for a change when facing life-threatening cold feels distant and a problem for another day. This journey will be the greatest test of my life. Could you give us a rundown on the others? Vickers and Barnaby. Like Cliff Notes. Who are they? Asked William. Sadu stroked his mighty beard and scowled. Vickers. I don't know too much about her, to tell you the truth. I met her the first time only yesterday along with Barnaby, at the Poseidon's Trident. A scruffy old joint of little importance situated here nearby, but it did the trick well enough. A quiet disreputable place is adequate if you want to have a chat with someone and drink a few pints while you're at it. Ah, Mademoiselle Vickers. Well, the broad had brains, that's for sure. And she was easy on the eyes too, if I may say so myself. But that is a whole other conversation. Allure, one night out is obviously not enough time to truly get to know a stranger, but she ticked the right boxes for me, that I can say. I think she will be an asset to this expedition team. I don't know if she has any particular unique set of skills that made Mosu Milton select her, but I suppose we shall find out in time, mais oui. What about this Barnaby fellow? Asked William. Sadu smiled. That man is a rock, and just the type we need all around. He is an old friend and comrade of mine, and I can vouch for him. A well-versed mountaineer who climbed K2 with me back in 2010. I think he's also been to the Arctic once, but don't quote me on that. I'd have to ask him again for a more detailed story. Either way, he is in excellent physical form, and if anyone can contribute to a journey like this, it's him. Oscar hired me, but I brought Nathan into the fold. The girl was all Oscar's choice. I know nothing more of her other than what I just told you. The Arctic. William was impressed. That's a good sign. What about Antarctica? Has he been there before? Have you been there? Oh, no. I have not, at least. And to my knowledge, neither has Barnaby or Vickers. I think they would have mentioned it straight away if so. Very few people ever venture to Antarctica, as you may know. Oh, I know that for sure. That's sort of the appeal of this whole trek, you see, said William, and he gave John a look. So, nobody in this group ever set foot there before. If that is the case, then perhaps, just maybe, leading them astray, if we want to do so, might actually work. Mosu Milton informed me that we are due to depart on the 12th, this coming Friday. Which I am sure you both are aware of. They both nodded. So, my little friends, you have but 2 days left in paradise before you enter the gates of hell. While Dante described his 7th circle of hell as a fiery pit, I suspect you both will wish you were there instead of where we are going. The frosty no man's land will have its due unless we tread with the utmost caution. So Kupa, have a pint at the pub, a good meal, or a whiff of some sweet herb while you are at it. Because come Friday, you want some good memory to cling on to. And I hope the 2 of you are docile enough to take in simple instructions down there and follow my command. The day after tomorrow we will cast off, and you will get to meet Ms. Vickers and Mr. Barnaby. Spend your last hours in freedom carefully. They may be your last. Jacques Sardou smiled as he foretold his dire prophecy of times to come, and his scar glistered in the dim Perth afternoon. Savannah plowed through the Indian Ocean with a lethargic, albeit confident rhythm. John stood at the railing next to Sardou and looked across the ocean. Night had fallen, and the stars slowly began to visualize above them. The full moon shone bright. He held onto the railing by the bow with a firm grip and stared wistfully at the moon. He closed his eyes. I wonder what the moon really is. We know that it couldn't possibly be terra firma and that it most likely is not a spheroid, as stars can be seen through it on certain days. And that it probably is its own light source. But what is its purpose if this place we live in is designed by the hand of an intelligent creator? Is it an anti-sun of sorts, the yin to the sun's yang? The harvest moon has always been considered a harbinger of dire things to come and a reminder of one's mortality. Death is coming for you and all that. But what causes the phases of it? Is the moon recharging itself somehow when it goes through the phases? I wonder if we will ever know. I doubt we are meant to know. The phases of the moon do not work in the heliocentric model. That I do know. How the hell are we able to see a crescent moon during daytime? Even when the moon is gibbous, it's Kupa. A deep, guttural voice from behind yanked him unceremoniously out of his fantasizing. We are soon there, mon ami. Is there anything else you would like to tell me before we arrive? Now would be the time, little friend. Sardou gave him a sly look that turned John's blood cold. No. Nothing I can think of. I just think that it's rather étrange. 2 spring chickens who wake up one day with a death wish and a desire to reach the South Pole. Tell me, my friend. What is it you really want? Sardou's gaze was ever piercing, and John scrambled to come up with an excuse at the top of his head. That really is all there is to it, honest. We had an epiphany, and it lingered. We seek a thrill, beyond what can be found in our gated communities at home. We seek something en belon, so to speak. Something that's missing in our lives back home. En belon. So, you speak French. A tad bit of French, but it is rusty. I will concede that much. Although my French is probably better than your Swedish, if I were to venture a guess. Sardou cackled loudly. I won't argue with that claim, little one. If the point of life is to learn as many tongues as possible, I think you may have me beaten. I don't know much of Sweden, other than Ingrid Bergman and Zlatan. Zlatan. I didn't think North Americans followed the beautiful game. I have relatives in Paris. They kept me updated when he played there. Ah. John leaned over the railing and watched the hull of Savannah gracefully cleave her way through the ocean, like a knife through butter. The ocean bathed in the reflection of the moonlight, and John stood in awe at the beauty of cruising through the open sea on a spring night, somewhere in the Indian Ocean. For now all was well. Time for me to head inside. I think I'll get some shut-eye, said Sardou suddenly. Hold on tight, kid. We are far away from home, the both of us. Far away, and about to embark on our clandestine journey. Don't fall in the water, please. I don't want to wake up to the tunes of people screaming that we have a man overboard. Sardou turned away slowly after delivering his ominous warning and headed inside deck, and John was left all alone on the bow. Just as Sardou had left, he began to feel breezes of the chilly kind blowing in from the west. While he did bring his usual trench coat with him on the ship, he wore his Patagonia winter jacket this night. And probably for many nights to come. It's not exactly probable that I will be casually dressed for the foreseeable future unless the weather forecast for Antarctica says otherwise. Holy smokes. Antarctica. I've never been this far from home, ever. Have I ever been in the southern hemisphere before this? I can't recall. Oh, right. Hemisphere. Hemisplane. The chill began to take hold for real now, and he wished that he wore a hat of some sort, preferably in fur. He looked straight up again and mused over the stars, those mysterious lights in the night sky. I wonder how many people throughout these thousands of years have stargazed in bewilderment, trying to understand our place in this world. People from all civilizations over every corner of the earth must have felt as humbled as I feel right now when they looked up and tried to make sense of the heavenly bodies attached to the ceiling above. That place we were taught was outer space. They must have seen it even clearer back in the days of the earliest civilizations, when there was no light pollution. As clear as I see the starfield right here, on the waters in the middle of nowhere, they must have seen it like this everywhere on Earth. The ancients. They were right about so much, and they would have detested the world of today. They knew how to take care of the earth, and they let their five senses guide them through life, instead of being a programmed cog on the wheel of consumerism and being a glorified slave, working for a corrupt nation. They were not the ignorant ones. We are. John let his eyes wander over the firmament, and his gaze stayed fixed on a particularly bright star. It was the southern pole star, Sigma Octantis, he knew. It shone like a crystalline diamond in the night, and it was impossible to mistake it for anything else. John unpocketed his Samsung and searched the web for Sigma Octantis, distance from Earth. It is 280.5 light years, 280.5 light years. Yeah, and I'm the Queen of England. That star is close. I know it, every fiber in my body tells me it is right there, just a couple of thousands of miles up at most. The ancients knew this. Although their methods of measuring the celestial bodies would be considered outdated by modern astronomy, it is eerie that a simple device like the astrolabe is more accurate than all the theoretical mathematics the scientists of today scramble with. They are so wrapped up in theory and speculation that they can literally not see the forest from the trees. The tangled web of these mathemagics are a key point as to why this deception took so long for us to uncover. The astrolabe is thousands of years old, but I would gladly take it if the choice was between being guided by that archaic device or Neil deGrasse Tyson in person. John browsed through the applications on his Samsung Galaxy and wrote William a message on WhatsApp. I'm standing by the bow. Come out to me when you can. William was seated in the comfortable lounge at Deck 5, bent over the table in frustration. He stared at his hand of cards with a dour look on his face. 9 of diamonds and 6 of spades. The flop on the table showed King of Hearts, Queen of Hearts, and 8 of clubs. Could it get any worse? The turn came and went, and as expected, his prospects of winning this game became more distant by the minute. The turn card was 3 of clubs. Well, if this isn't a terrible hand, then I don't know what is. Should I bluff them hard? Ah, screw it. I'm a gambler in heart and soul. Mr. Milton? Asked Jamie Vickers politely with a hint of urgency. Would you check or raise? William puffed up his chest and tried his best at looking like a confident high roller sitting on a killer hand. I will raise you with $200 Australian dollars. Nathan Barnaby was taken aback. $200? What is this, the Monte Carlo high stakes table? That's more than my total sum of chips. He cried and threw his cards on the table. That's a fold from me, tough guy. Vickers on the other hand showed no signs of throwing in the towel on a whim like that. She looked at her cards and grabbed a handful of chips and balanced them in front of her, and she pushed them forward towards the pot in the middle. I'll call your 200 and raise you 100 more. William was most surprised. What the hell? She claims to be an artist from South Dakota, working a part-time job, earning minimum wage. She claims. And she is going to call me out at the poker table. I'll see about that, girl. I'll call your 300, Ms. Vickers, he said calmly, and he pushed his chips forward and observed her general mannerisms straight after he shoved them in the pot. She looked very plain in this dim light setting, clad in a beige coverall and her hair tied up in a ribbon. Her facial gestures revealed nothing, and this irked William beyond words. Every poker player, even the cream of the crop, has a weak spot. And they eventually reveal it, whether it be a subtle tick or something more obvious. Nathan Barnaby looked from one player to the other and mumbled. You are out of your minds, the both of you, and did his duty as dealer by unveiling the river card. Ace of diamonds. All in, said William and pushed all the poker chips he had left to a total value of 600 Australian dollars. Once you've kicked a bluff in motion, you need to follow it all the way and amp it up if threatened. She will fold now. I can tell. William perched in his chair with a smug look on his face. Your call, my dear, he said. She did not hesitate for a second. All in, she said loudly, and threw her remaining chips in the pot. What a bitch. She saw right through me. I'm a doomed man. Well well well. It is time to show what you've got. You first, Mr. Milton, announced Barnaby. William sighed loudly and revealed his 2 cards. I have no clue why I thought I could win this one. Beggar's belief, I guess. He placed the 6 of spades and the 9 of diamonds on the table. Nathan laughed. Well, I doubt your family made their fortune from poker winnings because you're an abysmal player if this is your usual operating procedure. Jamie. Jamie Vickers revealed her 2 cards, which turned out to be ace of spades and ace of clubs. 3 of a kind. And an aces no less. You win the lot, Poppet. Barnaby said with a smile on his face. He knew how wealthy the Miltons were, and it seemed to make his day that a regular working-class girl skinned William dry. Thanks, said Jamie excitedly, and reached for the pot of money, while William sighed loudly enough for everyone to hear. My attempts of masquerading as a successful fraudster were woeful. For some reason, people see right through me. I'm about as see-through as a Swiss cheese. To be fair, there are worse character traits out there than being a bad liar. Congratulations, Jamie. I think we'll have a drink now. Do you folks care for brandy? Both Jamie and William agreed that a glass of cognac would serve them well, and Barnaby rose to his feet and fetched a bottle of Hennessy. He unloaded 3 brandy glasses from the cupboard and opened the bottle. As he poured the liquor, he caught a glimpse from the small oval window to the left and saw the glimmer of moonlight shining down on the pitch-black waters outside. He approached the window and tried his hardest to discern any hint of land in sight at the horizon, or something else other than miles of never-ending ocean as far as the eye could see. He quickly realized that it was a futile effort and noticed that it had begun to drizzle outside as faint drops of water splashed on the side of the window. Imagining how unpleasant it must be to step outside of the warm interior of the ship on deck, he downed his glass of brandy and felt the warmth of the liquor slide through his body like a serpent writhing through a mountain crack. He poured himself another glass and waddled towards the long table as the increasing ocean waves had begun to pound the ship more intensely, causing the passengers to experience a bumpier ride than they would have liked. Here you go. Cheers. They drank their brandy, and the atmosphere in the room mellowed out almost immediately. Now it was Jamie's turn to peek outside the window. No land in sight, unless my eyes are playing tricks on me. The moon is quite something tonight though, and the stars have come out to play. But we've got to be close, right? Nathan took another sip of brandy and nodded. We are. We're no longer talking days. We'll be counting hours henceforth. Hours. Just hours away, before our boots touch Antarctic soil, and the second leg of our expedition begins. A trek that will lead us, where? I'm shaking, but I can't tell what I am shaking for the most. Fear of death or something worse, or sheer excitement of being on the trail of something monumental. The greatest secret ever kept and buried to the graves by those who orchestrated the deception in its infancy shall be exhumed. Nathan looked at the 2 youngsters with a curious look on his face. So what's your story, younglings? Why would you volunteer to board a cruise bound to the gates of hell, the most inhospitable place on earth? William was well prepared for trap questions, and his tactic was deflection. I could ask you the same, stranger. Why are you here? Nathan laughed. Good question. Good question. I'm afraid my story is not all that thrilling, nor are my motives all that noble. I am doing this for the money, and that's about it. Not just the money though. I get a rush out of expeditions like these. Every time I return home from them, I can barely settle at home before I long for another adventure. Another mountain to climb, or an uncharted land to conquer. If it exists, I want to claim it in my name. I won't be able to participate in journeys such as these forever. I mean, I am nearly 50. Make hay while the sun shines and all that. In 10 or 15 years from now, I doubt I'll be in the mental or physical shape for something like this. Anyway, when Jacques called, I did not hesitate. I could not turn it down. Our last expedition was a bloody bitch, and we almost died on that Satan's Peak they call K2. But once we did get to the top, man. It was a feeling so exhilarating that it goes beyond all words. I was levitating, ascending to a higher plane, almost. How new age that sounds, William said dryly, and studied the man in front of him. He claimed to be in his 50s, which sounded about right. Clearly, he was middle-aged, as the wrinkles would tell that he was not born yesterday. He had a face with sharp features and sported an awe-inspiring mustache. What was even more striking than the mustache was his long, brown hair, which was so long it almost reached the belt on his trousers. He looks like a crossover between a hippie from the 70s and a vagabond who slept more nights on the side of the road than indoors. A type of strong hard man who wakes up at 5:30 every day and goes on a spontaneous 2-mile jogging session. Well, I am on this ship because I want to explore new grounds and explore an area that is unlike any other swath of land on the planet. I want to be as far off from civilization right now as possible. The further off, the more remote, the better for me. Also, wouldn't mind seeing an emperor penguin in the flesh, said Jamie. William nodded approvingly. Yeah, something like that for me too. Minus the penguins. I don't really care about those all that much. Escapism, if you will. I needed a break from it all. He could see in Nathan's eyes that he was not sold. Why would you want to get away from anything? I know who you are, obviously. Everyone on this ship knows your story. You have all the freedom and material possessions that money can buy, and you can go wherever you please. People don't run off to Antarctica to escape. People do not venture here looking for a vacation resort. Try the Bahamas for that or the Seychelles. I just find it hard to believe that you aren't driven by something else. Well, there are some life experiences that I would like to tick off that cannot be found back home, nor anywhere else. I want to stare Mother Nature in her eyes and tell her that I'm not afraid of her most gruesome creation. This continent, where life is nearly impossible to be found. Except for the odd flock of emperor penguins, as you know, there is no indigenous population in Antarctica. Every continent on Earth has an indigenous population. Every continent except this one. Antarctica is special, and I want to find out what secret she is concealing from the unknowing world outside. Just as he finished explaining, his phone buzzed. He saw the WhatsApp icon blinking and clicked on the new message. Pardon me, my friends. I will head out for a while and blow the cobwebs away. Playing poker with you was my pleasure, even if I was robbed dry. Nathan burst into laughter, and even Jamie smiled. You can handle a minor financial hit, I'm sure, roared Nathan and took another generous sip of brandy. That I can. I'll see you both in the morning, he said and opened the sliding doors to the deck and walked out into the cold. Almost immediately, he stumbled on his feet as strong winds came blowing through. These polar winds are murderous. Is he really weathering these storms out here, somewhere by the bow, as he said? He grabbed a hold of the railing and carefully slid himself towards the very front of the ship. Wondering if John had made the same decision of going back inside, he saw the shape of someone standing right by the bow of the ship, with his head tilted up, looking at something in the night sky. John! He cried, but the shout was drowned out by the blowing winds and the sound of waves crashing into the sides of the vessel. John did not hear him scream. John! He walked up behind him and touched him gently on the back, and John flinched like an arrow loosed from a bow. Jesus. Scaring me like that, good grief. I could have fallen off. We ought to go inside, said William and shivered. Each second is more of a torment than the last. It's not a good idea to be out here for longer than necessary, and especially not on your own. Well, I'm not alone now, am I? He said. I thought it would be a good idea if you'd give me a rundown on the others, since I assume you've been socializing with them all night. What do you think of them? I've only barely talked to them, and that was yesterday. I haven't been in the mood for any sort of get-together ever since we boarded, for whatever reason. I've been dwelling a lot, trying to mentally steel myself for what is to come. I like them both. They seem like decent companions. Well, thus far. Looks can be deceiving. Yes. I talked to Jacques Sadu out here not too long ago. That fellow, I don't know, honestly. I don't know what to make of him. He strikes me as a volatile man with a short fuse. The type of creature who shoots first and thinks later. It's like he knows that we are up to something. Well, at least that I am up to something. I don't know how he feels about you. I don't know, to be honest. We've barely spoken since we met him at the docks 1 week ago. The little we've spoken since has just been general courtesies. He's very keen on sucking up to me, for obvious reasons. Yes, of course, said John. Either way, Sadu gives me the creeps. We have to keep an eye on him. We'll keep an eye on him together then. They did not speak any further on the matter of the crew and looked out on the endless seas together in silence. The winds had calmed down, and the only sound now they could hear was the hustle and bustle from the crew's motor and the waves, pounding the ship in an endless array of loud splashes. We are so far away now, John. Further away from any civilized area either of us ever have been. So far away and so nearby to our destination. We will be there come morning, if the captain's time estimation still holds. I will speak to the captain myself before clocking in for the night. I just want to tell you, John, that if anything goes south on this expedition, I am sorry for luring you in. This was my little project all along, after all. I should be held accountable should things turn bad. Stop it. We've talked of the hurdles to come and the dangers we will face for ages now. I know what I'm getting thrust into. I came on my own accord and I was acting by my free will. I am ready for this, he said and gave his friend an amicable look. His answer seemed to delight William, and they experienced a moment of complete solace and trust aboard the Ark, en route to the ends of the earth. William looked to the west and then to the east. Captain James Cook sailed these waters, almost precisely where we are right now. Towards the end of the 18th century, the Admiralty ordered him to return to the Southern Ocean to map the distances around Antarctica. It took him no less than 3 years to circumnavigate the entire continent. Cook and his crew must have suffered through bloody hell during those 3 years they were posted in these parts. 3 years of bone-chilling temperatures, frostbite, and having to do battle with the merciless sea every day. I cannot recall if they ever set foot on Antarctica, but if they did make land they could not have stayed there for long. This place, John, it's like it is designed to keep us out of here. I don't think we are meant to be here. What do you mean? Are you saying we live inside a simulation? We just might be, but that's a discussion for another day. As you know, this place is about as lively as a nuclear winter. It is almost entirely dead. No plants, no indigenous population, and barely any wildlife to talk of. If this world is created, which we have come to believe, by something so advanced and beyond us mere mortals in every sense of the word, I believe this continent is shaped by our God to be as inhospitable as possible. He wants us to stay away. He has put up a do not enter sign, and he is spelling it out. God, I sound like a lunatic. Do I make any sense right now? You don't. I understand what you mean. Especially since the North Pole is so hospitable and lush. The anomalies of the poles are one of those first conundrums about the globe model that just rubbed me the wrong way when I looked into it. According to the globe model, the Earth is tilted on its axis, and we experience summer and winter, depending on where we are in space during our elliptical orbit. What makes no sense is that when we are the furthest away from the sun, about 3 million miles in fact, that is when we have our summer in the north. Can you wrap your head around that? Those blazing hot days back home in July when the sun fries everything that crawls, they say that we are 3 million miles closer in the winter. Nonsense. I agree about that, and I don't believe in the heliocentric explanation for the seasons at all. It is beyond childish. However, there is one thing I could not stop thinking about just before you came out here. I've been stargazing right here on this spot for hours. And it occurred to me that there's a problem with the stars that no flat Earth model has explained yet. The deciphering of the southern stars is of paramount importance, John. I agree. We still don't know what's going on up there. John pointed at the bright star he had been gazing at the most. You see that star? That's Sigma Octantis, as you may know. Here, the starfield rotates. Counterclockwise, yes. As opposed to the clockwise rotation in the north. So how would that work, and why can't we see Polaris from where we are at right now? If we're on a sphere after all, it checks out as it is supposed to. On the ball you would not be able to see Polaris from where we're at, since we are on the other side of the ball and can't see through it. I don't know, John. I'm being honest here. But remember this. Just because the rotation of the stars seemingly work on the globe does not mean that we are now back to being monkeys spinning on a ball, and that you could just throw out everything we've just been through and pretend that there are no problems with the sphere. What it means is that we have more work to do, and it will take many years to truly map this place out. Remember, John, they've had thousands of years constructing their reality, making sure the mathematics checks out. We've had no more than 5 years. Eventually we will have this place mapped out, whether it be tomorrow or long after I'm dead. Who knows if it will happen in my lifetime? As for Polaris, well, you cannot see it from this latitude. Did you know that you can sight it from the Canary Islands? It is just way too far south, even though the Canary Islands are still in the northern hemisphere. Or hemisplane, if you will. it would be impossible. There are so many questions left to answer, like the true age of the Earth. I don't believe for a second that this place is billions of years old, but how many years has it stood firm? Who am I to say? I don't know. Do you think we'll ever have this place fully mapped out? Oh, I'd love that. One day, it may happen. The south is the key. In the north we have pretty much everything covered. But when it comes to the south, it's still a mystery of sorts. Just take the flight routes on an AE map. In the north, the flight routes taken by commercial airplanes make far more sense on a plane than a sphere. Everything checks out. Below the equator, however, that is when things start to get wonky. A flight from Argentina to Australia takes about 12 to 15 hours in the real world, but on the AE map, it does not add up if the AE map is correct. The distances between points in the south are stretched, so it would seem like the southern flights debunk the flat Earth at first glance, as it does not seem to work if the AE map is true. I am not convinced though. There might be other factors at play, such as wind currents and favorable jet streams in the far south, that help the airplanes to fly faster. Like I've said before, they are absolutely and unquestionably concealing something monumental down here in the south. In the north, you can track all airplanes by their GPS position, but in the south, once the plane is airbound, they switch the GPS tracker off, all of them. I wish I would have showed it to you on Planefinder when we were in Perth. They are deceiving us by hiding their true cruising altitude and their real position on Earth. The GPS trackers are magically turned on again, some minutes before the plane arrives to their planned southern destination. There's chicanery going on here, clearly. They are hiding the real flight paths that airplanes take when traversing the south. John sighed. The deeper down this rabbit hole I get, the more it feels like I truly know nothing. Anything is possible from this point onwards. William nodded. Precisely. The Earth is a complex algorithm to decode, for sure. We have to be humble enough and admit that there are just some things we don't know of right here in this very moment, and all we can do is speculate. For now, John stretched his body. He had been standing perched by the bow for far longer than what would be prudent, and he felt numb. He looked across the ocean for the 100th time, expecting to see ice walls emerge at the horizon. But there was nothing, only the miles-wide ocean for as far as the eye could see. At least in the cover of darkness. What do you think we will run into when we arrive there? What kind of muscle will we face, so to speak? Surely, they could not hope to cover the entire shoreline with military outposts even if they tried. It'd be far too wide, even if they had all the manpower in the world at their disposal. William shivered. An excellent question. I've been musing over this issue for quite some time, and I have concluded that we are in the dark here, I'm afraid. We don't know. Nobody knows. We can only hope for the best, and that our hopes of arriving there stealthily will be realized. Like you said, whatever the size may be of that area we call Antarctica truly is, it is way too vast to set up a perimeter around it, if you will. There's not a patrol boat fleet large enough, if you could even make one up with a magic spell wand. You'd literally need millions, so I am cautiously optimistic. Our creator crafted this world cleverly enough that there might actually be very little need for the kind of muscle you are speaking of. Mother Nature takes care of trespassers herself. No man can survive in Antarctica, barring that they bring an army under their command, like Admiral Byrd did in the 40s during Operation High Jump and Operation Deep Freeze. There's nothing down there. No McDonald's, no Walmart. If you screw up, you will freeze to death within hours, and your corpse will be covered by snow even quicker. Charming, said John, and he made no attempts of hiding how morose he sounded. William had already set the stage with his dour tidings. Once again, they found themselves at a loss for words and fell into a state of silence. The waves that plunged the ship only moments before seemed to have gone away, and the only sound remaining was the humming sound from the engine below. Everything was still. John was contemplating what they would find at the end of the road and could not resist the urge to ask the expert about it once more. What do you think, he asked. A physical barrier somewhere down there? Or more land beyond? Or perhaps both? You've thought about this way longer than I have, if I dare to guess. Every day ever since you woke up to this thought must have pummeled the back of your head. William stared out across the ocean and nodded slowly. I most certainly have, John. Both possibilities are equally as enticing, but which one is more probable? I don't know. A physical barrier out there somewhere would be illogical. A pressurized system needs a container, and if there is a dome on top, it would make a whole lot of sense. If you pinned a scientist to the wall and ask him or her how the atmosphere of Earth could coexist adjacent to the infinite vacuum of space, they would stutter with their words. While some may conjure up a pseudoscientific theoretical excuse, they would all stand there like a deer in headlights. Because I think that deep down, they know that what we've been told is hogwash. I think there is credence to the idea that the powers that be are indeed hiding landmasses beyond Antarctica. The power elite would want to conceal those potential lands for obvious reasons. Especially if they are lush and sprawling with resources, like Admiral Byrd hinted at. If there are minerals and precious gems to be mined in Antarctica, like Byrd said, pretty much all major corporations would have set up shop in Antarctica and mined the hell out of it, but they don't. And you know why. Antarctica is under world government quarantine. Yeah. Whatever we find down there, if we do find something, we need to document it, store it, file it. For safekeeping. If we are to blow the lid off this thing, we need hard proof that conclusively shows that we are being lied to about where we live by the power elite, John pointed out. Unless we provide the public with something that would hold in court, our quest might turn out to be fruitless. We are not letting this one slide. I'm glad you are equally as zeroed in on that as I am. But go to bed now, John. We are still miles away from hypothetical domes to touch or mythological faraway lands to discover. And do not worry too much about Sidhu and the rest. That is a problem for another day. We'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. Not a bad idea. I've been standing out here for far too long, a bit of rest would do me good. He took his hand from the railing and turned to William. Yeah, I think you may be right. A couple of hours of sleep is what I need. What about you? I think I'll stay here for a little while longer. There'll be dawn soon, and I don't want to miss it for the world. Our first sunrise in Antarctica. Geez Louise. How far we have come. We'll have boots on the ground come morning, he whispered to himself excitedly. Good night then, said John drowsily, and he walked over the deck with gentle steps towards the sliding doors. Just as soon as he opened the door, he heard his friend shouting from behind. Captain Cook, yelled William and saluted him from afar. Sleep tight, Captain Cook. John rolled his eyes. He saluted him back and walked straight into the warmth and shut the doors, taking the stairs down to the 4th floor. He walked onwards and finally found his cabin and threw himself on the bed with a grace and elegance akin to an inebriated sloth, hanging loosely from a tree in a South American rainforest. How on earth did I get this tired? Did I wrestle the Yeti and manage to forget all about it? He undressed himself clumsily and threw all the clothes carelessly on the floor. He rolled into the bed on a two-rel and covered himself under the quilt. This is the highlight of the day. Being buried under a heavenly duvet en route to the greatest adventure known to man. The toughest challenge I will ever face. He shut his eyes and hoped to fall asleep right as the head touched the pillow. But the array of 100 thoughts still echoed in his head. His thoughts drifted towards the final destination. The end of the road. Suddenly, his mind's eye drifted off to a picture he had seen long before, but he could not recall where. The painting, to be precise, but what was the name of the painter? I have it on my tongue. Flammarion. Yes, Flammarion. Camille Flammarion. The French astronomer. I must see that picture again. He opened his eyes, reached for his Samsung Galaxy, and searched. The painting of a man peeking behind the curtain of the firmament of God, the man who reached the ends of the earth, lifting the veil. He beholds the kingdom of God outside the firmament, as described in the Bible. Oh yes. There it is. Is this what awaits us in the end? Christians do say that the earth is the footstool of God and that the Lord dwells outside of this realm, looking down on us. Watching our every step. I've been a skeptic of all religions for as long as I can remember, and I have barely even set foot in church in all my life, but very soon I have a feeling that this skepticism towards the idea that we are divine creations inhabiting a very special place indeed will wash away. Not only for me, but for the entire population of Earth. If we succeed. If we succeed. Mosu Picard. I can see the whole city from here. The skyline of the city of Augsburg shrunk slowly but surely before John's gaze as he looked down from the hot air balloon. Don't peer over that ledge, fool. Keep your eyes on the gauge instead. We are on our way up to the stratosphere in order to collect scientific data and measure cosmic particles, not to sightsee. Pay attention to what the instruments are detecting. That is your job, said Picard sternly. The balloon rose upwards rapidly, and soon enough he could barely discern the city features any longer. Just seconds later, they found themselves in the thick of a cloud layer, and John felt the early, but ever so familiar, symptoms of hyperventilation. He tried to draw breath, but it did not work. It felt as if he was being suffocated with a pillow by some unknown assailant. The winds were blowing like no tomorrow, and he fell to his knees in the basket and crouched to the middle of it in hopes of staying safe. "Almost there," screamed Picard. His wavy black hair flapped around like a pennant on a particularly stormy day at the beach. He adjusted his glasses and held on tight. "We'll reach maximum altitude soon. Not long until we cap out. Hold on tight." Only moments later, the balloon's ascent came to a halt, and they found themselves to be perfectly stationary thousands of feet above Earth. Picard undonned his leather hat, and John followed suit. He saw Picard peering over the ledge, still crouched in fetal position in the middle of the basket. "This is eerie. We are perfectly still. I don't even feel a breeze here." He pulled himself together and rose to his feet slowly. "I can handle heights. I don't suffer from vertigo, usually. This is just like looking down from the Eiffel Tower, just much higher. It's just the same." He peered over the edge, and what he saw made him keel over in the basket. Not only the height, but the earth, the horizon. "I can see so far. I can see too far, and the horizon is still at eye level. How high up are we? How is this possible?" The sound of 3 loud thuds flung him out of the bed like a cannonball. "My God. Where am I? Oh right. I'm here." He looked out through the small window in the cabin and was instantly blinded by the light that came pouring in. As his eyes adjusted to the sunlight, he looked more closely. There's not a cloud in the sky. We're bathing in sunlight. When he looked down from the sky and let the eyes wander down to ground level, he saw it. Ice. A large wall of ice stretching as far as the eye could see, straight in front of him. It was not particularly tall, only about 50 to 60 feet high, from what John could guess. But it was tall enough. The shoreline could very well be called an ice wall by someone, without making a mockery of the concept. 3 more thudding sounds echoed through the cabin. The knocks came from outside of the door, and he could make an educated guess as to who was standing outside. "John?" He heard a familiar voice cry through the door. "Wake up for heaven's sake. We are here." John rose to his feet half naked and rushed to the door. He opened it. "Are you ready? Breakfast in the dining hall in 5. We eat a sturdy breakfast, pack our gear, and then we go, my friend. This ship will head back to Perth at 3 o'clock. What time is it? And where are we now exactly?" 9 in the morning. We are about 5 miles west of McMurdo Station, right in the thick of the Ross Ice Shelf. It was Sadu who planned the course, and he made the decision to make land somewhere not too close to the known outposts, such as McMurdo and Casey Station. But still close enough in order for us to readjust our course towards that place, should everything go south, and we feel compelled to throw in the towel and hand ourselves over to the authorities. Over my dead body. I will not stop walking until we find what are here to discover. The plan is for us to make our way towards the known walking route that stretches between the ceremonial South Pole and McMurdo Station, once we are out of harm's way of the actual McMurdo Station, of course. We will not show up at their research station, flaunting our equipment or announcing our purpose here. But we will walk their road. Sadu first suggested that we should have made land near Casey Station, but I vetoed him. Casey Station is too far away from the road I told you about. John stretched himself and got dressed. He put on the thermal underwear William had given him the other day, a union suit of exquisite quality. It would come in handy, he said. The man himself wore a long, white fur jacket. And something else pinned on his chest. It was a silver brooch that appeared to be shaped like a large dog. What on earth is that thing? There are no dogs in Antarctica. I may not be the expert, but I know that much. Wrong continent. William sighed. I've told you to watch Game of Thrones several times now. You should have caught up with that before we got here. It's a bit late now. Anyway, the pin needle represents the dire wolf of House Stark. Can't you tell the difference between a dog and a wolf? John rolled his eyes more ferociously than he ever had before. This brooch may just take the cake when it comes to his cringeworthy antics. And will this proud wolf give you the inner strength you will need for our walk? Give you the spiritual guidance that you need for the hardships to come? Well, when you put it like that, it does sound rather ridiculous. Superstitious? Asked John. William shrugged. I guess. By the way, you look just like Jaime Lannister, said William. I don't know who that is. Of course you don't. Let's have that breakfast now. Come along. The promise of a sturdy meal to start the day off ended John's persecution, and he followed along. Well, I guess there's no harm done in extensive display of pop culture nerdiness. After all, we are in the one place on earth where shallow opinions don't matter. The smell of fried bacon and sausage oozed through the corridors on the ship, and John took that as a promising omen. They entered the hall and served themselves with bacon, eggs, tomatoes, and toast washed down with a jug of steaming hot black coffee. I dreamt of August Pickard tonight, John revealed, as he claimed a table for them in the far side of the hall. Wow, really? The Swiss inventor? Did you dream of his notorious balloon flight? Get out of here. I'm not making this up. I did dream of it. It might have had something to do with it. It was one of the very first items of research I ran into when you persuaded me to look into this thing. It just stuck in my mind how he went further up in the air than anyone ever had. The first man who ever went up to the stratosphere. In the early 30s, I believe. And he said that the Earth appeared to be a flat disk with upturned edges. William smiled. Of course I know of that forgotten piece of history. It's not something one forgets. He's without a shadow of the doubt the first human being who saw how the Earth looks like from above a height like that. And he declared it as being perfectly flat. Yeah, it's crazy. And nobody believed him. No, they did not. Although, I guess you could make the case that he didn't even realize what he actually saw. In 1930, the narrative was too far gone already. The debate ended long ago, so he must have been mistaken. I don't know if the scientific community would have branded him as a liar or the like, or given him the benefit of the doubt and chalked it up as an optical illusion. Even though their own math clearly says that the horizon would not rise to eye level at that altitude. Geometrics 101. Science is a dogma, my friend, now and then. Now and then. John looked around in the dining hall and noticed that there was barely a soul to be seen, barring some of the Savannah kitchen staff. Where are the rest? William shrugged and attacked a large slice of bacon with his fork. Asleep, I guess. Or they've already eaten and are busy preparing themselves. As you may know, this is the day of days. Everyone's preparing in their own way. I wonder where our self-proclaimed adventure god Jacques Sardou is though. I thought he'd be here too, lurking about, said John. All of a sudden, Nathan Barnaby rushed into the dining hall sweating and excited. You, he shouted. The both of you? We have visitors. Come with me. Who are these visitors that Nathan's talking about? Are we caught already? John downed his lukewarm cup of coffee and donned his jacket. They both followed Nathan through the corridors leading out to the bow of the ship. John noticed that they, whomever they may be, had put up a provisional ramp connecting the bow of Savannah to the icy shoreline ahead. In other words, their first steps on Antarctic shores would be easier than one may have thought. There would be no climbing or ice scaling required. They stepped onto the ramp and balanced their way forward. And all of a sudden, their boots had made first contact with the so beleaguered southernmost continent of Earth. If it now even is a continent, so to speak. Antarctica. They looked at one another, and their faces revealed that they were now equally as excited to get to the task at hand. He took a deep breath and inhaled the fresh polar air. It was not nearly as cold as he had thought it would. He looked at the weather application in his phone, which telegraphed the current temperature as -24 degrees Celsius. Out of nowhere, strange-sounding shrieks began to cry from somewhere inland. A cacophony of nasal, screeching voices crying out in symphony. And it sounded like they came from somewhere nearby. What on earth could produce a sound like that? It sounds like a rusty car engine that's refusing to start up. I'll take you to our hosts. Jacques and Jamie are there already. John trembled on the inside. Hosts? What kind of host would live here? Antarctica has no indigenous population. Everybody knows that. They waded through the thick snow in less than 5 minutes, and it suddenly dawned on John what the source of all the noise could be. Oh yes. Our hosts. I forgot. A huge flock of penguins waddled around in disarray, each one louder than the last. Emperor penguins, said Nathan. Endemic to Antarctica. There's only a handful of men in the world who ever had the pleasure of standing face to face with these creatures, so take a good look while you can. Jamie sat crouched next to a juvenile penguin and petted it gently. Sardou stood with his arms crossed and looked at the chaotic scene with a displeased look on his rugged face. Worthless animals, of no use to us. But harmless, I suppose. If you count inane noise as harmless, which I don't. John saw a penguin in the midst that was to his liking. He walked into the fray and slowly removed the glove on his right hand in order to pet it. It was a large adult penguin with black and white plumage and yellow stripes around its neck. He'd be a perfect mascot for my favorite football team back home. Gathered around the adult penguin were 3 emperor penguin chicks, much shorter than their parent, all in gray feathered plumages. John noticed that it seemed to be the chicks who were responsible for all the racket. I suppose they're hungry and underfed. When we'll be in their situation some weeks from now, I hope we'll make less of a noise about it. So what next? John asked Sadu as he rubbed the neck of the penguin. We are to head back to the savannah, and we'll unload the whole lot. The whole shebang, Koopa. Everything we'll need, we will drag out of her belly. After lunch, we'll rendezvous on deck and have ourselves a drink. And then we leave the ship for the last time, and our mission commences. No time to lose, eh? We are supplied for many weeks again, but even the most well-stored of supply carts will run out on the road if the worst should happen and we find ourselves outside of God's grace. The key to all successful expeditions is to put as many miles as one possibly can behind for the day. So buckle up, Mizumi. I think we have experienced enough of the wildlife for one day. Back to the savannah. They obeyed the Canadian, and the quintet marched swiftly back to the savannah, which lay anchored precisely where they left her. One after the other with Sadu in charge, they walked the ramp from the ice shelf to deck. They were back on the savannah, and all was well. After lunch, which consisted of a healthy load of goulash soup to each man and woman, they gathered on deck as agreed upon. They had now unloaded all the clothes, tools, technical equipment, medical supplies, and all other necessities they brought with them from Perth. They were ready to walk the walk. Ladies and gentlemen. We are ready. Eager to walk the entire way to a place few ever set foot on. The South Pole. There is a reason to this. It's painfully hard to get there. And especially tricky without any aid from a government institution. Doing it off the books is almost unheard of, that I can promise. We'd have to look back to the days of Amundsen in order to find any comparison. But get there we shall. Are you ready, or am I just talking for myself? Sadu looked into the eyes of each and every one of his 4 companions, who were circled around him. More than ready, said Jamie enthusiastically. Absolutely, said Nathan. Ready, said William. John nodded in approval. It's for real now. No turning back. The savannah would return home in no more than an hour, and then it's adieu and farewell. I do not feel ready in the slightest, now when it truly dawns upon me how dangerous this expedition might turn out to be. But I have to put up a front. Appearances are important. I've been ready all my life, he lied, and Sadu grinned. Excellent, my friends. Excellent. He unveiled a bottle of Bollinger in his jacket and uncorked it with a popping sound and poured the liquid in 5 glasses on the table by the bow. They all took 1 glass each and raised it to eye level. An exquisite champagne for an exquisite expedition. Something for the road, as the English say. Santi. The quintet took a gentle sip of the drink, all but John. He downed his entire glass and went for the bottle to have another crack at it. If there's ever been a day in my life when I've deserved to get a little bit hammered, it's today. I've earned it. Our plan is simple but most effective, said Jacques Sadu as he watched the hull of Savannah slowly shrink before his eyes and disappear into the misty horizon. He stood by the shoreline, and his brown fur coat flapped in the wind. We will walk the entire day. We walk for as long as the sun is up, and then more. If we keep a stiff upper lip and a steady pace, we will reach the road that connects McMurdo to the Amundsen Scott before night has fallen. It's about 20-25 miles as the crow flies, which will take us anywhere between 8 and 12 hours. In normal conditions. He stroked his beard and observed his motley crew with doubt in his eyes, and he began to wonder if this endeavor was really worth taking. Enticing paychecks be damned. We will go the distance today, Mizumi. We are no sloths, eh? We will see it through. All it takes is for you lot to follow my instructions and fight the good fight, and we'll get there before the morning comes. He unveiled a golden compass from his right-hand pocket and reached for another object in his fur coat. He pulled up a white scroll and rolled it out on the ground. It was a detailed map of Antarctica, and the 5 of them kneeled in order to get a better view. Sadu put his index finger on the red spot at Mount Erebus. This is where we are right now, whereabouts? About 10 miles west of that landmark. Once we've reached the main road, all that remains is for us to follow it all the way to the South Pole. Our job for today is to reach the main road without straying too close to McMurdo and their military encampments. We have to make sure that we stay on the right path. And I will make sure of that, Kupa. I will. John felt compelled to intrude on the Canadian's monologue. So, finding the main road will be easy? Sadu scoffed. No, it won't be. But it will be easier than the later stages of our expedition for sure. The most cumbersome element in this expedition is simply weathering the entire journey. That is your test. You might think that it is easy enough to stay alive here on the shoreline basking in sunlight at -20. Well, just wait. Just wait. Just wait until we make camp at nightfall, when not even a dozen blankets will keep you warm. All you are left with at that point is finding your inner mental and physical strength. If you don't, well, then you are doomed, I'm afraid. If you just find the inner spark within, we will all reach Amundsen Scott safe and sound. Aside from our own stores, we will share the load equally when it comes to the duty of pulling the sled, carrying the additional equipment and supplies. The sled is made of carbon fiber, a gift from Oscar Milton himself via Lockheed Martin. For our eyes only. Sadu gave William a nod, and the latter nodded back. The sled is unusually light and does not weigh much at all, but we should still take turns so that the workload is shared brotherly. If all goes well, we reach Amundsen Scott base within 3 to 4 weeks. Once we've arrived, we shall spend a couple of days there and rest until we head home the same route from which we arrived. Your father assures us that the people at Amundsen Scott will welcome us with open arms as we are traveling under the guise of being correspondents for Lockheed Martin. William once again felt compelled to nod in approval for everything the man said. While he had no intention whatsoever in following the Canadian's plan of returning home after reaching Amundsen Scott, he knew that appearances are important. Once we've arrived at the base, I will make contact with our people in Perth and ask them to have the Savannah loaded and ready to depart for us when we've come back. When we've come back to where we stand right now. That is the plan, Kupa. I have never, despite my rather advanced age, failed with an expedition. When I decide to achieve something, I always do. So be calm, and unless any of you have any last-minute grievances to air, let us march. Dear God. When we thought this through back home and evaluated all the different outcomes, neither William nor I counted with the inclusion of a hot-headed Canadian in the mix. He's like the joker card someone throws in the deck of cards just before a game of poker without telling the other players. As nobody spoke up with any objections, Jacques Sadu marched onwards, and the rest followed in line. Nathan had the honor of being the first man at arms helming the sled detail, and he was second in line after Sadu. Jamie walked behind and came in a third, while John and William purposefully dragged behind a few meters and came in last with a landslide. What do you think our folks back home are doing at this moment? Probably something sane, like watching the television, streaming the latest Black Mirror episode on Netflix, walking their dog, probably anything but this. If they could see us now. John's only reply was a grunt. While he had been expecting the cold, it was the wind that did it for him right now. As the sun was setting, almost immediately were they pummeled with icy gusts as some sort of cosmic response. Why can't the wind come from behind and not straight at us? With this pace, we will reach Amundsen Scott by Christmas. Our creator is putting us to the test, for sure. Do you think our food supply will last for the return journey? I mean, we are going further than any of them think we are. They planned for Amundsen Scott and then the way back. Surely, we are going to need more than what we have here. Our pemmican snack bars we've got in all their glory. They won't last forever. I mean, they're not going to last for as long as the elvish bread Frodo and Sam brought with them in The Lord of the Rings. Damn, what were they called? This is your genre after, lembas. They were called lembas. Given to them by Lady Galadriel herself. Oh, right. I'm afraid you're right, John. They're not going to last for as long as the lembas bread did. I guess we'll have to go out and club some penguins to death if hunger gets the better of us. John laughed. But seriously. How are we going to handle that issue? By crossing our fingers. When we proceed onwards after Amundsen Scott, all bets are off. We will have to grab as much food and water we can carry. I'm working on this, John. A working plan that now consists of clubbing defenseless penguins to death. You've allayed my fears completely. How does penguin meat taste like anyways? They waded through the snow without pauses, and to the relief of all, the wind had died off just a little. Sidhu made use of this and made sure the walking pace was constant and rapid. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon and the sun had nearly set completely. Just for a while longer, my friends. A while longer. He heard their leader scream at the top of his lungs in the front. We have to reach the main road before the night falls. We may have GPS that can lead us right, but it isn't exactly pleasant to wade through the snows, stumbling around with flashlights in our hands. I don't think there's going to be a moon out tonight either, so you can count that off the list when it comes to any other source of light helping us. And we'll be freezing out here to death in this desolation in but a few hours. LA. When the clock turned 6, the dreaded Antarctic wind came back. It's as if we are being haunted by a ghoul. A ghoul with divine powers. He's telling us to go away. John stumbled and fell hard to the ground. William reached for him with a helping hand and got him to his feet. Jack Frost is out to get us, he said jokingly, and brushed the snow off his jacket and donned the rucksack again. We are nearly at the main road. Just hold on for a little longer, William assured him. After many hours of trudging through treacherous meter-high snows, hope was kindled for the quintet. They strode up a steep hill with snow so deep that John thought he'd be swallowed whole by it, like being sucked through a sinkhole. How Nathan managed to make his way up with the sled, I do not understand. Despite seeing him pull it off. It had to be a miracle. He's earned his weight in gold already. And a good night's sleep. As they stood on the hill and looked around them, Jamie shouted from the left, I can see the path. The main road, I think it might be there. She looked once more into her pair of binoculars to make sure. After a while, she put her Steiner Safari ultra-sharp binoculars down on the ground and pointed at something. There's clearly a road of some sort down there. There are tire tracks in the snow, might be from some scooter or snowcat. Or something even bigger. I also see red poles lined up on the side of the road, around 20 meters between each pole. This is definitely what we've been searching for. Nathan Barnaby sighed a breath of relief. Thank God. I don't think I could have mustered on for any longer today. There's literally no gas in the engine left, I'm afraid. He put the cart down on the hill and kneeled. Sidhu looked at his watch. 9:15. In the ballpark of what I had planned, only quicker, he proclaimed in a self-admiring manner. We'll pitch our tents here on the hill, and then we'll walk down to the road tomorrow at dawn. Let's set the tents up to suit and unpack the blankets, and have yourselves a good snack. And the firewood, don't forget the firewood. If someone would grab a few pieces of wood and build a fire for us tonight, that'd be tremendous. John and Nathan rummaged through the cart and found the tent sticks. They scattered the spare parts on the ground and began setting the tent up. Jamie walked over to the sled and went for the wood, and she found a bundle of them tightly packed in a bag. Is this all we got? She asked Sidhu. This will only last for 1 or 2 times. 3 at the most. Sidhu nodded. That is correct. We needed the space for other things. Light the fire, ma chérie. She got to work and piled the wood up, forming the logs into a neatly balanced pyramid. She placed one of the logs at her feet and began carving 2 long sticks out of the wood and cut a hole in the middle of the log. Then, she put the sticks in the hole and started rubbing them back and forth ferociously. That's never going to work, said William. It's too cold. She ignored him and kept doing her handiwork. After only a minute or 2 there was smoke. And after smoke came the fire. She threw the burning log into the pyramid and the embers engulfed the wooden structure quickly. Voila, she cried out proudly and kneeled before the fire that burned bright in the desolation of Antarctica. Wow. Where did you learn that? Back home in Montana. William was awestruck. South Dakota, she corrected him. I'm from South Dakota. Rapid City, born and bred. Do you know of the old Western television series called Deadwood? Damn right I do. And old. Hardly. It's a classic already for sure, but if Deadwood is old, then I don't know what something like Bonanza would be. Ancient, perhaps. Have you been there? Asked William. Yes, many times. Rapid City is the next door neighbor. My father took me there the first time, when I was about 12 or 13. I remember stepping into the saloon number 10, vividly so. You know, the saloon where the legendary gunman Wild Bill Hickok was shot point blank by Jack McCall at the end of a poker game. Dead man's hand, said William. That's how the poker hand went by, ever since that fateful shot in the neck killed the man. Pair of aces and eights in black. Yes, I do recall it being called something like that. Jamie looked into the glistering fire with a blank expression on her face and seemed to drift away for a moment. So, now you've seen your beloved penguins, said William and leaned by the fire, rubbing his cold hands just above the heat source. Do you feel alive out here, in this sea of nothingness? What is it you want to run away from so dearly, if I may ask? Jamie Vickers kept staring into the fire with dead eyes, and William wondered for a second if she had heard a word of what he just said. Just as soon as he was about to ask again, she turned away from the fire and looked into his eyes. 1 year ago, I lost my twin sister. She died only 2 years after being diagnosed, and it was a gruesome struggle. She had ALS. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Dear God. I know of the disease, said William. The last stretch was absolutely unbearable. The last couple of months, to be precise. They were so dreadful. When death finally came knocking, we were all relieved. My parents were relieved. I was relieved. She wiped off the tears that came streaming from her eyes with her glove. It isn't fair. It's not fair that she is all but bones in a box, rotting away 6 feet below in a coffin, while I am here, living and breathing in the best of my days, venturing to places beyond my wildest dreams. I am so sorry, he said and crawled up next to Jamie and embraced her tightly. Merde. They were unceremoniously interrupted by Jacques Sadu, who stumbled into their field of view with a half-empty liquor bottle in his hand. Merde, merde. So cold. I am getting too old for this. Ah. This feels better. Much better. He swept his fur coat around him and put his hands over the fire. Much better. More than a little bit put off by his roughneck intrusion, William swallowed it and decided to ask about the status of their expedition. How many days until we reach Amundsen, Scott? The South Pole, I mean. Sadu grunted and drank from the vodka bottle before answering. It's about 600 miles left. We will walk. About 10 to 15 miles a day under my leadership. I think we will reach it with this pace in about 4 weeks. Erring on the side of caution, of course. Many things can happen still. It might take months. I see. We'll fight the good fight, said William. Exactement. This expedition will be successful, my little friends. That I can promise. Damn good work, son. There's more spirit in you than meets the eye. Nathan exclaimed with joy. They had successfully put up the 5th and final tent, and their work for the night was complete. Jacques Sadu would sleep in this tent. Looks can be deceiving, mumbled John tiredly. I'm heading over to my tent now. I can barely keep my eyes open, and my legs are spaghetti. Good night. Good night. I'll get myself some sleep too, said Nathan. John left him there and wandered slowly back to his own tent. He kept his eyes down in the snow and was tired beyond words. But something caught the side of his eye. In the sky. A velvet sheen, green lights in the sky. He looked straight up to the heavens and was struck by one of the most surrealistic, beautiful sights he had ever had the pleasure to behold. Green vibrating stripes, behind a neon purple palette, shone so bright that he almost stumbled and fell to the ground. Instead of going into the tent to sleep, he sat down outside of it in the cold snow and just observed the heavenly wonders above in the night. Aurora Australis. I may be lost in body and soul, but I have come to a magical place. Whatever happens from here on out, this has to be worth it. It has to be, and this is a sign of good things to come. I hope. I hope.